All right, it is now time for another episode of the sampling. In this, it's Book 1, Empires of Dust, The Court of Broken Knives by Anna Smith Spark. Because you know what? Book 2 has too much of a fixation on YA. So I'm going to attempt to read the first few kind of, what do you call it? Paragraphs. Yes, there we go. Let's see. Has an interesting looking map. At least there's that. Come on, sample. Load. Let's see if it'll load. Or is the book going to have us a field day? We shall find out. Hey, let me see if I can get it to pop up. Well, for the first book, it didn't even work. Looks like it's completely blank for the sample. So I'm going to look at the sample of the second book. Let's see. In the tall house in Torith Harbor, the high priestess Talthea, lay awake in the darkness, listening to her lover's breath. Faint noises outside the window. A woman's voice calling, drunken singing, and a shriek and a crash. Laughter. The wind had risen again. She could hear the sea, the waves breaking on the shingle, the gulls. I have seen a dragon, she thought. I have seen a dragon dancing on the wind. I have seen the sea, the sky, the cold of frost, the beauty of the world. I have felt the sun on my face as it rose over the desert. I have felt the clear running water beneath my feet. I have known sorrow and pain and happiness and love. She sat up and brought a candle to burning. The man beside her stirred at it, clawing roughly at his face. She smoothed her hand over his forehead, and he sighed and relaxed back into deeper sleep. King Marthith Alsterseer, Arameth returned to us. King Ruin, King of Shadows, King of Dust, King of Death. Man, that's a lot of kingliness, isn't it? Dragon Lord, Dragon Killer, Dragon King, Demonborn, Parasite, Murderer, Hathla Addict. Oh man, what kind of love interest does this lady have? The most beautiful man in the world. Oh yes, but because he's pectoral in every way, we're gonna just ignore the fact that apparently he did father murder, general murder, some sort of drug addict. He's all sorts of different kings and a bunch of different dragon and demon shit in him. Okay then. Um, Most YA has that theme where it's like um they give them more kind of different add-ons and superpowers than superheroes, basically. Okay, so to continue. She went over to the wall where his sword hung, took it up, walked back to the bed. For a moment her hands shook. A kindness, she thought. The gulls screamed at the window. The shadows crawled on the walls. She raised the sword over his heart, looked at him, a kindness to him. But he's so beautiful, she thought. She put the sword back down and curled up back beside him and slept. Well, no, it didn't say and slept. It just has slept dot. Um, well, at least it's English. And since I murder the English language on a daily basis, okay then. But it's like, I guess it would make more context if I could see parts of the first book. But, just looking at this, it's like, uh, yeah, no, it's not really catching me. I guess I could try chapter 2 is a little bit longer. Uh, with a line like full morning. Dot. The green moors above the tower of Torith Harbor. Dot. You know. Um, so it's kind of like she's writing in a way where it's fragmented sentences. Um, well, majority fragmented sentences. I do that a little bit with Uplift Protocol, but when I'm making a point, like you'll see it. Excuse me. Ooh, I need more coffee, but yeah, there we go. Um, yeah, when I'm trying to make a point of like when a character's thinking something or a little line, but this has a lot more um fragments. Uh, I guess I could take that one line, the King Mather Alice Al Trace Rasier. I don't even know how to say that. But yeah, I would say the king was called da da da, his name. He has returned to us. He is also known as the King of Ruin, the King of Shadows, the King of Dust, and the King of Death. Having the constant fragments, it just doesn't do it for me. Um, and looking at some of the way it's written, I guess the tense stuff is a little bit of present tense mixed with a little bit of past tense, depending on what. That's what the some of the fragments end up doing. But again, for me, as I'm writing, sometimes I use little fragments to make a point about something. But for the most part, I use complete sentences. So let's see. Chapter 2. Full morning. The green moors above the town of Torith Harbor. Green grass and wildflowers running to the top of the cliff. Dark rocks, weathered stone. The steep drop to the turning sea. Gray sky, gray earth, gray water. A rent in the world. A scar, a sore, where the tower of Malif had stood proud above the town and the water, where the battle had been fought, where a young man had been crowned king. Again, I probably would have just tried to do a shorter sentence that just encapsulates like some of the area around it. Like the sun shone in the sky. It was well past, like, say 10 o'clock, and I probably would have had like just a short thing like a ruined tower stood off to the northeast or whatever. It was wrapped in vines and foliage or whatever. You know, just a few lines to get a sense of like, okay, is this tower important for a reason, or a little bit of backdrop. That's that's also to comparison because once you start writing and you're looking at other stuff, you're like, well, I would do things like this way just because it's more of my writing preference. So, you know what, I'm finding this sampling stuff rather useful because I can see the way certain people write things, and I'm like, nah, I'd rather write things this way. So basically, we're continuing on. Marith A, because I can't say that guy's last name, stood on the cliff top looking at the ruins. In the light of day, the battleground was a desolation. I would put in the stark light of day, the battleground was desolate. Again, that's just an example. Rock and earth and flesh and blood that had cooled and set like a poured glass. A sheen on it, also like glass. In places, human faces stared up through the surface, drowned and entombed. A great fortress had stood here. I mean, there's decent enough word variation, but again, it doesn't. That's the reason why I also read Uplift Protocol stuff out loud to myself now before I put down a issue, so that way the narration, if I read it out loud to myself, I can be like, wait, this doesn't sound as smooth as it could be. So, looking back at this thing, let's see, bedchambers, feasting halls, the chapel of Amath, the world conqueror, where Marith had knelt to receive his ancestors' blessing as king. Treasures, beautiful objects, silk, tapestry, gold, gems. In a few hours, the army of Akandariskesis Akraman had destroyed it utterly. His soldiers' horses snorted and shifted uneasily as the death stink. Oh, at the death stink. Even the gulls and crows had flown. I did this, Mara thought. So strange to know that. I did this. I made this ruin, this triumph of ending, mine. And they do the triumph of ending, and then does the colon stuff, and then mine. The summation of my life, perhaps. I killed a man and raised a fortress to ashes, and thus must be a king. This kind of it's like the character is spending too much time wool gathering. It's been a couple. Again, part way into chapter 2, and I'm like, why should I care about these people? They're just waxing poetic, basically. I mean, go figure. Guess that's it for right now. There's only so much I really want to do with this thing. I can see why this makes people pull their hair out if they just want to sit down and read a story. Is this really the way people are taught in reading groups now and like workshops? Because, man, it's definitely not the flavor I want to read. See you later, everybody.